Hello, how are you? I'm Matthew, host of Truth from the Booth on Folked Up Radio. Thanks for making space for me and my guest today. Some stories don't begin with headlines. They begin with the sound of rain falling through a tarp at 3 o'clock in the morning. They begin with a dog curled against its owner, keeping watch while the rest of the city sleeps behind locked doors. And they begin with promises. Promises of housing, promises of tiny homes, promises that this time, something is finally going to happen. Enter Andrew Goodsell. Today we're returning to the Green Road encampment where Wednesday and Thursday there was no escape from the heavy rain. And after Andrew posted a video announcing progress with tiny homes, I knew it was time to get him back on the show. I mean, the workers have told Andrew, and I quote, "We're on it." Andrew will explain the relevance of the metal poles that appeared across the encampment. Are people following the rules? How many are still calling that property home? We'll separate public housing from supportive housing and ask whether years of funding have translated into lasting results. We'll talk about recent job cuts at the Nova Scotia Provincial Housing Authority. Care teams pitching tents while governments promise permanent homes. We'll also look ahead. Green Road is expected to close in November of 2027, less than a year before voters head back to the polls. So what happens between now and then? For a few moments, we'll leave the boardrooms, step onto the gravel, and hear from someone living every chapter of this story. Not through reports or press conferences, but through lived experience. I'm Matthew. My uninterrupted conversation with Andrew Goodsell is next on folkedupradio.com. Abandonment sleeps first, curled in doorways and policy gaps, while blame walks past with its hands in its pockets, eyes fixed on anywhere but here. The night carries an energy, not hope exactly, more the hum of survival, a fragile current running from breath to breath, from cardboard to concrete. Compassion arrives quietly. It never announces itself. It sounds like a cup of coffee set down without a lecture, a hand up offered, not a handout. Good deeds done in the margins where cameras don't look. Love still lives here, somehow, in shared cigarettes, in names remembered, in the way people watch each other sleep, as if guarding a small, borrowed peace. But everything feels illegal after dark. Existing, resting, being seen. A bench becomes a crime. The tent becomes jail time waiting to happen. Even stillness can be arrested. Death lingers, patient and polite, counting winters, counting overdoses, counting the moments no one made it back by morning. And yet, each day is momentous because survival is not small, because choosing to wake up in a world that keeps walking past you is an act of defiance. This is not failure. This is endurance. This is what it looks like when fragility learns to stand, when love refuses to leave, and when compassion, even cracked and tired, keeps showing up anyway. Andrew Goodsell joining me from just off the property at the Green Road encampment. Thanks for taking time to join me today.
It's good to be here, Matthew.
So in the intro, I mentioned that the Halifax Regional Municipality has experienced some torrential rain on Wednesday and Thursday of this past week. You're out in it. I want to start with the weather. How did you fare in those 2 days of downpour and looking ahead? And again, this is not making any secret. This conversation is being recorded on a Friday. It looks like it's going to be nice today. Sunshine in the forecast for Saturday and Sunday when this airs. So how are you making out in the elements, Andrew Goodsell?
Honestly, I really find, I try to remind people that rain is devastating, I find, during the day. Like, if it's at night, I love it. It can hammer on the tent. I'm in my tent. There's no worries. But daytime rain throughout the day is just devastating. For me to go anywhere, get any of my stuff, even take Dusty for a walk, we get torrentially drenched. And then I've got a tent to go back into that's got all my blankets and stuff lied down. So Dusty, the big old awesome wet dog that he is, he's going to go in, and my entire tent is then going to be damp or wet for X amount of hours, right? So I find that daytime rain can be devastating. I feel like we lucked out. I think it was Wednesday. We had a ton ton in the morning, but at least the evening was pretty good. Yesterday, not so much. Like, me and Dusty were definitely wet and damp for most of the day, right? So again, the struggle is real. And then it's not like I've got a bunch of clean clothes. Like, I'm very limited to what I have, right? So I'm not taking off all my stuff and putting on a new dry outfit or clean outfit, because I've got 2 or 3 outfits and I'm currently looking to get my laundry done, right? So, these little things that, doesn't even make one person bat an eye could make someone in my situation extremely depressed and or just in a really bad situation. I ended up fixing 2 people's tents actually over Wednesday because they were getting toppled by the rain and the wind. So here I am going out getting wet again because I know what it's like to suffer through that, and I wouldn't wish that upon anyone. So here I am taking whatever ropes and strings and pegs that I can find to help, support these other tents and stuff from falling down, or just like getting all the water into the tent and destroying someone's night, right?
Andrew, we first met at Grand Parade Square in the winter of 2023. I've known you all this time. We have documented your story on my live stream in the moment on this radio broadcast. I know you, and I believe, and you know, that you are a houseable individual. Why are you not?
I believe I am one of the easiest houseable individuals out there, and that by housing me and anyone similar to my situation that can take care of themselves, we're going to save insane amounts of money for the taxpayer, because we don't have any of this public housing, especially for singles and couples. I'm really going to push the single point here, because the majority of the people on the streets are singles. You got a handful of couples that could be easily in a single style unit sharing the space. And at 30% of someone's income, if we actually invested back into public housing, that would create a dignified living situation for people. And it's really not that hard. Like, to have basic standard rules on these places is solid. So I just don't understand why we're doing it. Not only is a lot of the people out on these streets or in these organizations houseable, but most of them don't even need assisted living. Like, you hear all these organizations pushing assisted living, but at the end of the day, that's just because that's what they need to stay alive. But for me and so many countless people that find themselves in these shelter beds, which are rumored right now to be costing the average taxpayer $5,000 per person, the numbers don't make sense to me, Matthew, unless we are actually just trying to encourage drug dealing shelters and big pharma to make money and, destroy people's mental health and not provide housing.
I'm going to give you a chance to talk about public housing versus geared to income housing versus supportive housing in a couple of moments. But I want you to, in this moment, can you paint us a picture of the current circumstances of where you are? You're in one of the 2 final remaining designated encampments here in the HRM, Green Road Encampment, Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, just on the other side of the harbor of where I am. I know the last time we spoke, the city and contractors came in and put metal poles in. Can you explain the relevance of that, and just who is there? Are they following the rules? What's the current situation like there, Andrew?
Basically what I see at Green Park is we do have all these poles that have been installed. Literally, it feels like they were put in randomly, and there really was no point for it. I planted my Honeycrisp apple tree in response to them putting all these metal poles down. And I think it's hilarious because not only are the metal poles randomly placed, like there doesn't seem to be any real placement for these poles. It honestly just feels like a huge waste of taxpayer dollars to throw these things down. And ironically, during the last couple storms, I kind of picture them as lightning rods in a big open field. So, I don't know, maybe the city's hoping I'll get struck by lightning or something and they won't have to deal with me. The people that are coming and going from the encampment, some of them are people like me. You get a handful of people that just, the society standards are just too much. We can't afford to live. We're not making living wage jobs, whatever the situation may be. A lot of the other people are people that are getting kicked out of these assisted living programs because their mental health and stuff is already that bad. So what they do is they get into places like the bridge, like the tiny home, like whatever. There's a fight or something that ensues. They get kicked out of these places. Then I've noticed CARE, which is run by Souls Harbor, they keep showing up now with tents, and they're setting these people up in the encampments, and then they disappear again. Most of them I hear get back into places like the bridge or the cove or any one of these assisted living programs that they have, and then rinse and repeat, right? So another fight, they get kicked out, getting a brand new tent, brand new everything again, put into the encampment by the CARE teams, and rinse and repeat over and over and over again.
You know, I'm glad that you brought that up, Andrew. I want people to know that CARE stands for Crisis Assistance and Response Team. So just think about the logistics. And I'm so glad that you brought this up, Andrew, because I know for a fact when I was at Grand Parade Square in the winter of 2023, I was shocked when a representative from Shelter, Nova Scotia, showed up on the property with one of their clients. And we have organizations that are a crisis assistance and response team dropping their clients off with tents at an encampment. Absolutely mind-blowing. So I can't imagine what thoughts go through your mind when you see something like that, Andrew.
Well, again, Matthew, for you, for all of the people that have been following along with us, and even the new ones, I don't know how I am not a standing ovation of where we have failed as a system. Because, again, if people really think about the grand scheme of things, how long I've been fighting this system, even through the transitional housing, what I have gone through, the job that I lost because I found myself homeless, the whole thing, right? Like the whole kit and caboodle. And then for me, I point out to people too that, you know, you get a few people that seem to be shouting out our government and giving these new guys kudos for things like the food rebate. But I'm like, you haven't fixed anything. You've given us all a little bit of our money back that we've already given you. And at the end of the day, it's not actually solving any of the problems. Food's still rising, you know, rents are still, everything is still going up. So you can subsidize and rebate and whatever to your heart's content. But unless we're actually tackling the core issues, you're going to find more tents like the one I'm currently looking at here set up in the Dartmouth Commons. It's not at the encampment. I'm looking at a tent right now in the Dartmouth Commons, propped up because people are losing their houses every day. People in places like Ocean Breeze, where 1,200 people got displaced, right? You're hearing this across our country, like Nova Scotia especially. We're now the highest cost of living in Canada. We're having more and more housing issues. Our food banks are being overrun. We're not dealing with any core issue. In fact, in my opinion, if you look at all these details, and the devil's always in the details, we are encouraging what we've currently got, which is a broken system that has all kinds of research showing where the mistakes are. And instead of actually investing in things like public housing and whatnot that have, again, research proving the benefits, we're only encouraging mental destruction.
And this is why you make such a great guest. You just bring the truth, you bring the passion, and you bring the lived experience. And I always appreciate you joining
It's
us.
so important to me, Matthew, because I have lived it. I have fought the fight. I've dealt with all of these organizations, and so many people don't believe me when I tell them things like, well, here I am filling out this information with these workers, and yet they're not even the right workers to fill out this form with. They can't sign anything. There's all this blank information. We don't know when we're going to be able to put Andrew in a place or how long we'll be willing to keep him for. We have no idea what we're even going to charge him for this place. This is mind-boggling to me because these organizations are all working together. I've filled out so many of these exact same forms, giving all of these guys permission to work together and everything. So if you are, let's talk the tiny homes here, then you must have a direct way of talking to my assistance worker and my outreach worker. So here's 3 workers that are all getting paid good money to do their jobs, and yet here I stand.
I was going to ask you about, I'm glad you just went right into the tiny homes, because you put a video out, and I've always encouraged people to just get in front of the camera, let people know what's going on, hold people accountable. And what you're just talking about, there is this new agreement for this tiny home. The workers have told you, we're on it. And I can hear it in your voice. You're retelling this, how triggering it is for you. How much faith do you have in this particular situation that you're going to find yourself inside of a tiny home, Andrew?
So I'd like to point out to all of the people that the very first time that I signed up for the tiny home specifically, I then had all my stuff at the university encampment plowed and thrown in the back of a dump truck when I took my dog for a walk. That is how much I feel confident that anything is going to get done with me right now.
Wow. Well, you know what? You're going to have an opportunity to express that frustration and that disappointment in the system, because you were saying on your own social media that you have been invited to a panel talk.
So I hope. So this is the thing. And again, I got to point out, this is the craziness of all of this stuff, is that it was the old director of homelessness that mentioned to me that this panel is going to happen. And I was informed that I was the first person this person thought about, and that I was encouraged, whatever, recommended for the panel. And I did make sure this person knew that not only was I very, very interested, but apparently they're willing to pay people to go to this panel and talk. I told him I would pay them to go to this panel and talk, because I have nothing, Matthew. I have $400 in change every month that I am lucky enough to get by the taxpayers, right? Who, we all put into this system. And I point out to everyone that the system's broken. I want to save people money, make this world a better place. Here's all the things that will do it. And we're not doing it, right? So will I even get on this panel, or are they just blowing smoke at me, trying to uplift me? And then at the end of the day, someone else gets it, right? I don't know.
Yeah, you know what? There's nothing more irritating than having someone blow smoke. It's so disappointing. I mentioned earlier that I want to give you a chance to explain in your words, with your experience, the difference between public housing, geared to income housing, and supportive housing. I have a sense that you feel that supportive housing has just failed, just a mismanagement of funds. Am I on the right path there?
Hands down. So it's actually non-profit housing geared to income, aka public housing, and supportive housing. So, for instance, supportive housing would be something like, I don't know, we'll say the Cove, the Bridge, Shelter Nova Scotia's got a couple of them. And what they are is that they're buildings or places, like Dignify, we'll say, living situations for people with intense problems, like really heavy alcohol addictions, really hard drug problems, whatever. These people are loved by whatever community members, and then are brought to these people and eventually get some kind of situation, which in my opinion isn't dignified for someone like myself, because you're being locked up in a building with all these restrictions. My daughter couldn't come over and see me, for instance, without permission. I wasn't allowed to grow a cannabis plant. I got kicked out by this system for getting dusty when I told them 2 years previously, when they put me in there saying that their goal was to transition me into public housing, and nothing ever happened. They put me in dusty out on the streets. They said, rehouse the dog or rehouse yourself. And yet now here we are, right? So, and then I find out after the fact that they had never even submitted all the public information that we had filled out. And I filled it out through Shelter Nova Scotia, I think 3 times. Once when I was at the greenhouse there. I'll think of the name here in a minute. And then twice when I was at the rebuilding, right? So it's like, to me, I feel like they told me they'd do one thing. They never did, because they were making money off of my name. Why would we want Andrew in public housing when we want that money, right?
I'm interested your thoughts on the recent announcement that the Nova Scotia Provincial Housing Authority is eliminating 34 jobs. What are your thoughts on that, Andrew?
So what I got to point out again to everyone is that we gave millions, if not billions, something crazy for the Housing Accelerator Fund. I then found out that that Housing Accelerator Fund didn't go towards any new public housing. It only went towards cover-up jobs on some of the old and towards administration costs. So then when I hear that we fired 34 people in administrative kind of positions, I really say to myself, well, let's talk about money mismanagement, right? And I think we're glorifying money mismanagement at this point. Poles in the ground, overpriced tiny homes from other places around the world, a bunch of little pallet shelters from California that tend to get soaked during the winter because they weren't built for Canadian weather. I could go on and on and on about the money mismanagement and the fact that, again, we're claiming roughly anywhere that I see on the very low end at $2,500 to some of the higher ends at $5,000 plus for every single bed. So if we're currently spending $5,000 on me, for instance, and the amount of paperwork I filled out, I really feel like there's probably $5,000, if not more, just in my name somehow getting distributed, then why am I not living in one of these condos we're so desperately trying to fill?
Well, the other thing I'm curious about, we're going to talk about Dusty. I've always brought Dusty into the conversation. I know how important he is to you, but there seems to be hurdles in place. You have stated on your social media just within the last month or so that for a fact people with dogs have gotten into the bridge.
Yep. Yeah, even after I signed up. And again, so this is another thing, and I got to point out the baloney of it all, okay, is that I signed up for the bridge because I didn't want to initially, and I still don't think that it's a dignified situation for someone like myself and Dusty who doesn't need assisted living, right? But again, the reality is that I did sign up with Emily, who was with Welcome Housing. And again, here's me getting tossed around from organization to organization, right? And then literally since I filled out that information, I've seen multiple people get kicked out of the bridge and or other places. And next thing you know, they're back in there and me and Dusty are still sitting in our tent, right? So then I find out that Emily is no longer working for Housing Nova Scotia. Again, for me, that is what it is. So they tell me, it's like, do you still want to work with us? Do you want us to get you a new worker? I'm like, yeah, obviously I don't want to be stuck in this situation. I'll work with whoever's willing to actually work with me. I've still got no new information from Welcome Housing, and yet I sit beside their office almost daily. They've got one up in, or the city does, or someone does. One of the main offices for the homelessness situation and the director of homelessness is in Alderney Landing, and I spend a lot of time at Alderney, right? So
yeah, it seems to be a revolving door of individuals, like caseworkers going on vacation, passing you off to someone else who doesn't know anything about you. It's the story that I've heard from you, unfortunately, for 2.5 years, and it's the same story I've heard from other people who've had to deal with multiple organizations, but 28 is just the facts that you're getting. I know that you were a big listener to 95.7 News Radio. You were a guest on that show. That program is now on the shelf. What are your thoughts on that program? That station being taken off the air?
I can tell you now that unless we do everything in our power to get that station back and the way it was, we're not doing enough. To me, it was one of the only real voices besides people like yourself that allow the average Haligonian to have a voice, or Dartmouthian, or HRMian. But yeah, to me, it was the real voice. It allowed me to share what was going on in my life with a large group of people. And I literally ran the last election on the news and information that I was getting from there, because you got so many intelligent people talking about the issues that we're having. So I'm able to break down, what I think people are saying that is non-fact, and then the people are actually coming on and giving the resources and saying where they're getting their information. And let's be honest, whether it was Rick Howe who said if you're, not angry, you're not paying attention, or if it was Todd Vino, who was, just pointing out how important it was to have these kind of things, or even Dan Alstrand, the last, who literally told everyone at the end of every episode to be kind. 95.7 was one of the best things that we had for the public good, and now we don't have it. And I honestly believe that, okay, Rogers sold it off. Well, we the people need it. Last I heard, 95.7 was getting record numbers. So the only reason I think to close down radio stations like 95.7, like the one they did in Vancouver, like the one they did in Ontario, these major shows that were telling people what's up, is to make sure less people know what's up.
Yeah, that's a great way to, that's a great point, Andrew. And I love the passion and the truth, the honesty, the rawness that you bring to Truth from the Booth every time you're a guest. I want to close with this, Andrew. You ran for mayor during the last Halifax Regional Municipality election. I think I saw online that you are getting ready to run in the next election, which is 18 months away. But before the next election, the Green Road encampment will close. It's slated to be closed in November of 2027. What are your plans for the next 18 months, Andrew Goodsell?
So my plans for the next 18 months are to survive. And as I get closer and closer to the next election, my then goal will be to make sure that people know what I'm interested in. So I will have a brand new pamphlet. It's going to make sure that public housing is the answer. It's my main push. It will always be my main push until we get it. I'll mention that I'm happy to take a pay freeze, because you know what? I think that the Sunshine class, the high-end ones anyway, do make way too much money. So I'd be happy as an official to not only take a pay freeze on my checks or whatever that I will then have coming in, but to also encourage and to put something out there that everyone in that class actually takes a pay freeze, because I know as a mayor, you can do that. So let's be honest, I don't think any of them will. All of our councillors and our new mayor decide that they deserve the new pay raise that they all just got, even though I felt that they didn't, that they should have taken a pay freeze this year. And then besides that, again, the public good, I also will have Dusty running with me, so he'll probably say something crazy like, woof, more dog parks,
Oh, fantastic. Listen, I wish you all the best, and I just always appreciate your time here on the radio with me.
We appreciate you giving us the time, Matthew. Like I say, we're losing more and more of our voice every day when we get things shut down. So here's hoping that Truth from the Booth, Folked Up Radio, and In the Moment stay around. We need everything we can get.
911, what's your emergency?
There is a season now when the forecast no longer begins with rain. It begins with smoke. This summer, from the forest of British Columbia to the boreal wilderness of Ontario and the Northwest Territories, hundreds of wildfires have rewritten the North American landscape. Millions of hectares have burned. Entire communities have been forced to flee. Firefighters have battled around the clock against fast-moving flames driven by heat, drought, and dry forest. The smoke refused to stay put. It crossed provinces, crossed borders, dimming skylines from the Canadian prairies to the American East Coast. Air quality warnings reached millions of people, while smoke from Canada's fires traveled thousands of kilometers, even across the Atlantic. For many, it was an inconvenience measured in hazy skies and canceled plans. For others, it was measured in minutes to evacuate a home, in livelihoods reduced to ash. In another summer, wondering if the next lightning strike or the next spark will be the one that changes everything. Wildfires have always been a part of North America's story, But the length of the fire season, the scale of the destruction, and the distance the smoke now travels are writing a new chapter. And this summer, the wind carried more than smoke. It carried a warning. I'm Matthew. Thanks for making space for me and Andrew today. Truth from the Booth will return on Sunday, August 9th with a new show and a new guest. Let's get you back to the music on Canada's #1 folk station, 99.9 FM Perth Andover, and folkedupradio.com.